Hello there.
Hello.
It's me, your boy, Bob the Ninja Goldfish, your volunteer director and member of the content team, here to host a podcast with our producer lead, Freddie. That's where you say hi, Freddie.
Hi, Wave. Does that count?
Okay. That's really good for the audio portion of this podcast.
Also, hello.
And you may notice a bit of a title change here. Our content producer lead, the Sid.
Wow, that's a little bit of responsibility. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the same. It's fine.
So, we're here today to talk a little bit about the way that systems are going to function with Limit Break and how we're changing the volunteering structure slightly. The big overview is interview tech will no longer be a volunteer position. That is transitioning into, as I mentioned with Sid, content producer. Don't worry. The reason we're doing this is to go into a little bit of information about all of this. And we are opening up a form today, I believe, that is going to allow people to apply for the positions of producer, content producer, and content team. Okay, so we're going to go through all of that in detail and sort of talk about it and what it's going to mean. You'll be able to find a link to this form on our social media. I'm hoping we'll find one in the announcements channel in the Discord. But we're going to go into a lot more of that soon. So, starting in general, this form opens today and will close on the 2nd of March. That will give us a week to sort out all of the stuff that comes out of that form, or the applicants and things like that, before volunteering opens up. So if you are accepted or whatever, you will know that you have been accepted for one of these positions before you have the opportunity to volunteer for other positions, so that you don't overload yourself or something like that. I think Sid and Freddie will agree. The reason we wanted to open this up on a separate form is these are roles that have quite a high responsibility curve to them, right?
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of pre-prep work as well for these shifts. So getting people in early so they kind of know what's going on and can group in with the team helps.
Yeah. The last couple of years, producer has been a staff-only position too. So
yeah, and it's burned quite a few members of stuff.
It has. There's a reason we're opening it up a bit.
I think the other reason is we were trying to figure out what exactly we expected from people in this position as well. And now that we've had a few years of experience, we know what exactly we're requesting, and not just being like, hey, do everything.
Yeah. So I figure the best thing to do would be to just go and talk about each of the positions and let you guys speak about your departments, really. So let's start with Freddie at what is possibly the top of the food chain when it comes to on duty positions in producer.
Definitely for in marathon, yes.
Yeah, in marathon.
Producer is I guess I'll start off with that, actually. Honestly, producer is kind of the main person behind the scenes that gives the go-ahead for transitions, gives the go-ahead for making sure that everyone is good to go, making sure that there's any emergency changes that need to be done, kind of a quick, kind of a snappy method. Someone doesn't show up for an interview, someone incentive is going to take too long and do the time. Usually we'll run that by someone first, but sometimes it's a quicker type thing. Making sure the runners know if they have time to go through credits, things like that. That's kind of the primary goal of the producer. And then there's a lot of kind of ancillary things that are very important to the back end. First off being is a very detailed set of notes. The producer is responsible for writing down pretty much anything that happens during their runs that they're a part of. We're still splitting this into 4-hour blocks, I believe. So you'll be on shift for 4 hours. You write down anything that happens that's good, that's bad, out of the ordinary for sure. And then make sure we have that for a kind of a post debrief afterwards. That's probably the most important things that the producer does. Like I said, there's also a lot of, they're the person that people go to if they need to install something on a PC, if they need to talk to someone about anything upcoming, if they have questions about anything, especially in the tech area. We'll start at the producer and then kind of go out to team lead, other volunteer leads as needed. They also make sure that the tech area is clear.
Right.
Yeah. What was that?
They're also a bit of a troubleshooter in so far as
yes.
They need to kind of have a
technical background,
technical knowledge of most of the departments.
Yep. The other kind of ancillary piece is, you're kind of the backup to the rest of the tech roles, especially on transition. It's kind of a sounding board. You're not really meant to take over any of those positions. It has happened occasionally, especially like a game ends quickly or late or something, and a stage tech hasn't quite shown up, or something with remote sometimes. But that occasionally happens, and you'll have to jump in real quick. But for the most part, you're mostly there as some stream tech is having issue getting this thing to pop up. Can you give them a quick and be like, okay, let's just this right here. So having some experience in the other roles is preferred for this.
Yeah, like one of the important things is you don't have to know every role, but the more roles you know, the better. So if the stream tech is having issues, you can possibly solve the issue. But if you can't, you know when to make that decision to call somebody else instead of waiting. That's basically, if you have more technical knowledge, it's great. Theoretically, you can solve these issues, but it's also knowing when to be like, all right, this is going to burn too much time, me trying to figure out how to, crop it because we do it differently than you do it at your event, that type of thing. It's really important. You don't have to know everything. I don't think any of us really do, but it's that.
Not really, yeah.
Group of knowledge, and then knowing when to be like, all right, somebody else is better at this. Ashen, get over here. I don't know how the mixer works. Help.
Yeah, you'll also
Ashen
have
gives us an evil.
You'll also have access to. Don't by any means assume that producer is the be all and end all. You are merely the funnel through which.
Yeah.
If you don't know something and no one else knows something, you will know who to contact and how to contact them.
A lot of it is facilitating. It's figuring out who to talk to, when to advance something to either a team lead or content lead or games lead or something like that.
Knowing that a transition is coming up and wanting to check the next runners in the room, or your new volunteers are here, or that kind of thing. So yeah, producers. That's producer. over to Sid to talk a little bit about content production. As I've said, the title has changed this year. So
yeah, we wanted to like make it more indicative of the role that interview is. We're trying to do more content stuff off-site, on-site, but also outside of the stream room. So we thought interview was kind of a little bit of a misnomer. More or less, the job will relatively wrap around the interview stuff and things that happen in the interview area. As of right now, I don't have any plans to move outside of the stream room, but that's part of the reason why we're doing this now, so that we can make plans to make out of the stream room, and anybody that is part of the team is aware of them and can give their input and creativity into creating those individual pieces that are outside of the stream room. For the most part, this is not going to restrict anybody that has done this before. I appreciate everyone's efforts in the previous years, and we didn't change it because any of you weren't acceptable or good enough. I just want to make sure to get that out immediately. We're just upgrading it because I feel like it takes a lot more of a skill set, and I need to change my training as well. But for the most part, we're going to be still doing the interview stuff. I would like to upgrade the area so it's not going to just be one camera, but we'll see. It's part of the reason why I want to get everybody in first, so they'll know rather than showing up on site and be like, okay, make it work. But we're going to be doing interview stuff. We have discussed adding in the checkpoint system, which we're probably going to retool, but we'll discuss it more when we get into things. Ideally, we'll have a segment like GDQ that we kind of anchor in the middle, that either we perform some stuff in there to keep the schedule on track or cut most of the content to push us off track. But that is another thing that we need the content members for to be available. One of the other important ones is making sure that you know who is going to be there for the interviews, both the interviewer and the interviewee, because non-surprisingly, sometimes people just lose track of time, schedule slips, they take a nap. There's a lot of different things that happen. So that's really the big role, is making sure that everybody is on schedule, because ideally the interview is to cover setup times. And unfortunately, like GDQ, we can't afford to have 2 stages. So the more clean we run our ship, the better everything looks, because we can get in between games and have a nice little interview or skit or something, and then lead into the next one. I think that's more or less it.
What will it entail? Like camera control and...
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So ideally, it's a little bit of everything. We're going to have Node, which, if you're not familiar, it's basically just our backend software that will help us display the prizes. It will help us display titles, names, pronouns, things like that. It's fairly straightforward, but you just need to make sure that they're in the right order for the right person. Need to make sure that the right prize is up, because we're going to have that for the interviewers to read. Our prize coordinator, Ambly, should be taking care of the prizes, but you can also double check and make sure those are there as well. The sound mixer itself, I find with interview, is fairly straightforward, but it wouldn't hurt to have a general idea of how it works. It's a good way to get somewhat familiar with sound mixing in a much less pressured situation. The only downside is, unfortunately, there needs to be a little bit more camera work. Right now, we only have the one camera, so the major amount of camera work is making sure prizes are visible and displayed well. Sometimes it's as small as a little snow globe, just this big, and you got to kind of zoom in to show it. Or maybe you see a pattern on a blanket, but you can't really make out that it's Pokemon. You zoom in a little bit and then pull back out. If we do end up with more cameras, then it will be a little bit more where I'd like to go between the different people. But right now, it's just the one, so we'll discuss it when we get to that point. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. the other major thing is just making sure that you're aware of this stuff and ready to learn. If there are some people, I've talked to quite a few, if you're knowledgeable in the field, I'm more than happy to take you, but I can teach you guys how to get used to this.
Yeah.
So you don't need to come in knowing it, but it'll make my life so much easier if you do.
Yeah. Something I want to underline, especially for content production, is an interest in the topic is kind of all you need. Everything else is completely teachable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if you're looking to maybe one day apply to be an actual producer, but you're not 100% confident with some of the stuff. Content production is a good sort of, let's get my feet under me, and you'll be doing a little bit of everything there as well. So
the only thing that's hard, I find a lot of people, is the camera movement. And it's one of those things you refine over years. So it's very hard to do with like 5 minutes a year. So it's very understandable. But it definitely gives you a large amount of different things to learn, and you interact with all the different things that more or less are the underpinnings of the entire event. And it's definitely open to new and old volunteers for sure. The only thing is, I just any sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? Any sort of like background, TV, film, even other productions, just let me know so I can have a general idea of what your knowledge level is coming in. Because for me,
but absolutely not necessary, right?
No, I came into this with like film and TV stuff, but it had been years since I'd used it, so I definitely can train people up. It's not too difficult. The hardest part is,
I don't want people thinking like, if you don't have film and TV experience, don't apply.
Absolutely not. I would rather somebody that can keep track of time, can make sure that the names are displayed properly and the board, the names are taken up and down, the sound is mixed well. I would rather the basic management skills over somebody that's really good at camera but can't remember any of that other stuff or handle it. Very much so.
Yeah, and I've volunteered for this before, and with no experience in TV and background, and it's really not that bad. I also want to highlight that if you're scared of or worried about the soundboard specifically, I would not use that as a disqualifier or a reason to not give it a go.
I'm going to be honest. There was a few times where I did the mixing wrong and just gaslit the interviewers into thinking it was better. So you really don't have to worry about it. If you lie hard enough, they'll believe you.
You know what? You're right, Sid.
Go ahead, fire me. Come on, big boy. I'm right here.
I'm pretty sure there was at least one interview where I got on the headphones for the soundboard, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we're good." I'm like, oh, "Okay."
That actually basically happens
nothing.
A lot, honestly. You'll go, "Are you good?" And then just the big trick is actually going, "Hey, talk to each other," and you don't do that. You go, "Hey, can you talk about lunch? What are you going to do in your run?" That's the real 100 IQ trick with audio mixing. Give them a subject that's very easy to talk about, and it'll make it so much easier to figure out whether they're hearing each other or not. And that's something you can use for the regular audio mixer too. The only downside is having to fight the video game audio, but that's a different story altogether.
Well, we'll have that improved this time, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And the third position we are opening up on this forum is the content team. We were hoping to have Ghoul here to talk about it, but that sadly hasn't managed to happen. I'm
3 in the morning or so.
Yeah, it's like 3 in the morning, which is why we were hoping to have Ghoul here. Silly Australians and time zones and things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the content team. Unlike the other two, I do want to underline this right out of the gate. Unlike the other two departments that we are opening up, application for the content team is a year-round committal. You will be expected to be involved in the podcasts that we do, in the side quests that we do, any sponsored content that comes up. You won't be expected to be in all of them, obviously, because that would be ridiculous. But just every now and again, throughout the year, we would like you guys to be involved in the podcast and things like that. Not only does it help take some of the stress off of, say, a Ghoul or a Sid or myself or whoever is hosting, but it also just lets you keep your work sharp and try different things. The content team are what you may have formerly known as the interview team. We've been calling them the content team for a little while now, mainly because of things like the podcast. We're also, as Sid mentioned, maybe looking at doing some non-interview stuff at the event. Maybe even doing like filming outside the stream room and things once we get that figured out. Content team is very much the forward-facing department that isn't hosting, because hosts are technically forward-facing as well because they speak to the audience. But content team is very much they're almost the faces of the event, as it were. They're the people you'll see doing interviews. They're the people you'll see doing the podcast. And it takes a certain je ne sais quoi to execute on that. And as such, when you apply, we're going to be asking you to include a link to something that you think showcases your personality, your energy, your expertise in this field. It can be a Twitch clip. It can be something you've hosted for another marathon. It can be something you record specifically for this. But there will be a section on the form for you to provide a link. If you are applying, you have to provide a link. If you apply and don't provide a link, we may reach out to you. But we have a week from the end of this form going down to volunteering opening up, and and the other factor with the content team is there will be callbacks. We will do a second. We will actually bring people in and have a callback sort of situation with them. The other thing that that needs to be underlined is if you apply for any of these three roles, you must be on our Discord, because that's how we're going to be contacting you to kind of let you know that you've been selected, basically.
Yeah,
there's definitely, for all three of these, there's a lot of pre-event work.
A lot of
pre-event work, but there's a lot of conversation at the very least. Yeah.
Especially when we're doing like inner year stuff. 99% of my communications are done via Discord, whether it be with the runners and stuff. And then when we do get to the production point where things are to the point where we're doing a actual show on a game or a podcast, I will mention that in the channel. I'll be like, hey, assuming I'm not interested in it, like we're doing Grandia next week, which I'm interested in, so I'll just take it. But I'll normally post those, like we have Suikoden coming up next month. Be like, hey, anybody really big into Suikoden? Because I'd really like a host that's more interested than just doing it. And that's a lot of what it is just paying a little bit of attention and being like, all right, nope, yep. But yeah, being in the Discord is incredibly important. there's so many times where I'm just like panic messaging people and I get nothing. It's very
And as pointed out by our wonderful stream lead, the link is just under the stream here on both platforms.
There's also, we have just the at the beginning of this podcast, the link to the form went live on the Discord in the announcements channel.
Yep.
It is also on all of our socials, as our social lead Mizuki is pointing out. Long story short, we just wanted to take today to talk a little bit about the roles that are opening up, why they're opening up. For the content team, the reason why we want to open up content team is we need more bodies on the content team. The team that we have right now, they are all very, very good at their jobs. It's just there's like 4 of them, and we want to get them some support, especially since you have like one of them is Vanny, who's our host lead, and one of them is Natara, like who's on our audio lead, and like just it's.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that wear a lot of hats, and we would like to reduce the amount of pressure on each person.
Yeah, there's a lot of wanting to reduce the burden on people. Like, as Freddie was saying, producer up until now has been a staff-only position, and that's been burning people out, and that's not okay. As Sid has said, the interview techs were all absolutely did their jobs very, very well.
Yep.
But we can then take, if we focus his team in, we can then take some of the volunteers that were applying for interview tech and moving them out to other departments, hopefully, to reduce stress in those other departments. Because one of the things I've been very conscious about as volunteer director is people going, I had so many orientations I needed to get to, or things like that. And the more people we can free up to, maybe instead of volunteering for interview tech, they volunteer for check-in, or for audio, or for cleaning, or whatever. That will then alleviate some of the stuff that we can do moving forward.
Sure. You want to tag in there, Ashen? Is that what this is?
Ashen's got his hand up.
First time, long time watcher, first time caller. You mentioned that these teams have had people involved with them in a long time. So question that came up for me was the people who have been part of these teams, specifically like the producer and the content team, will they be needing to reapply with this new application process?
If you'd given me 3 more sentences, I was getting to that.
See? Locked in here.
This is the staff experience,
check out the
everybody.
Big brain on Action. If you are currently on the content team, you should apply. We have a few members in the content team that haven't been very active, and we're going to kind of wipe it. I don't know how Sid, like, the thing with content production, Sid, is you didn't have any standing staff, did you? You were just a volunteer position, so this is a whole new thing for you. It was basically just kind of, we played it by ear every year, and the only like standing person was me. Yeah.
It's very funny going to GDQ and mentioning it, and they just look at me like I've got 3 heads, and I'm like, I'm the only one that runs interview, and they're like, what? It is a very quick in and out job. So if you just want to do stinger jobs, it's perfect. But it is a lot of little things that you get to learn very quickly. The really rolling back into the content team itself, though, as I kind of let it get away from me, we're also trying to not only bolster the numbers, but we also know we're coming to a new area where we want people to have a chance to come in. We also now have freed ourselves of kind of the other issues that we had that prevented people from wanting to attend. So I want that to allow people to come and express themselves. And we also are looking for creative people. Because like I said, we don't want to just do interview stuff. We want to do content. So if you feel like you have that drive to create innovative or interesting little skits, I usually approve just about everything. You just have to have a somewhat funny idea. And I'm really easy to make laugh. It's not hard.
True.
I laugh at myself and it's not even funny.
Yeah, and on the production side, one thing I want to mention is that even if you really only think you're going to have the availability or time or are kind of unsure about what you do and you only think you want to do or can do one shift over the course of a marathon, while I would prefer if you're able to do 2 or 3, even just one in the middle of the night will help the rest of our team help just a lot. Especially the overnight team. It's been kind of just a couple people doing producer over the late night, midnight shifts, and I know they would definitely like a little bit of a break on that.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's a place where our event suffers quite a lot, is overnight, because of the general circadian rhythms of limit break and the longer runs being overnight. It isn't like other marathons where there's lots of short runs and there's stuff happening overnight that you might need to see, like a 15-minute run at 3:00 in the morning that you really want to watch. Like if you want to watch Shin Megami Tensei, they're gonna be there for 8 hours, right? So you can go get a 4-hour nap in. We have a lot of problems with getting volunteers overnight. So that is something that, with focusing in, like, for example, to use interview tech as an example, when we were doing it as a volunteer position, we had like 15 interviews throughout the week, say, and at least 4 of those would be overnight. And there would be one person who had availability for all 4 of those interviews. And then we had to get the rest, like, by having a smaller, more focused content production team, it's more, okay, we only need 3 or 4 people in the content production team, and we just give them all 3 or 4 interviews each, right? And then it's a much more dedicated sort of role that you can focus in on, rather than having to learn it as part of like 4 different departments or whatever.
Yeah. If you're interested in tech stuff, the production side is the way to go. But if you're interested in being creative, it's definitely interview or content. And it all of these positions, obviously, we're saying they're elevated roles, and we're not going to just give you a piece of paper and say, learn it.
Yeah.
All of us are going to be making sure that if you have questions, we answer them. We have documentation. I'm so used to just doing it. I naturally just assume I'm doing the interview orientations one-on-one. And that's a lot easier than having a bunch of people crowded around a mixer and not being able to see what's going on. It's cumbersome for me, but I find it's incredibly important that everybody can look at it and go, I understand. Or at least feel like they understand when they say it, like I do. And then I come in and watch the video again before my shift.
Yeah, and for producer, it's more of I provide as very detailed documentation so that you can look over it on your own time. That one is a bit more of a reading the paper as opposed to on the job, but I definitely have in the past, and feel like I will drop in and just kind of hang out during a production shift as well and be like, okay, do you have any more questions? We'll run a quick orientation and overview of what we're doing before the marathon as well.
Yeah.
But generally, it's just kind of a lot of, even during your shift, like you can go through the documentation, be like, okay, this is what I'm doing for transition. You usually have a good amount of time in between runs.
The notes for producer are very thorough and will make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And like we kind of said, that one shift, it may not mean like much in terms of like impacting your schedule, but you got to remember, if you do give us one shift of producers and you're able to, that's one shift Freddie can actually like enjoy his day instead of working the same 4 to 8 every night. So even if you can give us one, we would very much appreciate it.
Yeah. That is something I think Sid mentioned it sort of there, and I should have brought this up when. These are what we are considering elevated roles. These are not
introductory. They're like advanced. I think we were playing around with.
These are not introductory. The point is this isn't these aren't roles where we are going to give you documentation and expect you to not read it, right? These are departments where we're going to orientate you. You are going to need to know what you are doing. I don't want to say there is no pressure on these departments. There's definitely some pressure on these departments, which is why we're opening them up slightly differently than regular volunteer departments. These are
producer, especially
on the ball. Yeah, producer, especially content team, especially because you're in front of a camera, and content producers because because you are basically responsible for what is happening on the camera. Someone in chat asked, is there a document with the rules about skits? Skits are going to be a thing that... Skits is a strong word.
Yeah.
It will be some form of content. It will be a thing that once we have settled on the content team, we will discuss amongst the content team and see what people have ideas for and what people are comfortable with. And more importantly, what we as an organization can execute.
Yeah.
Right? Because I could come up with the idea of like a 4-stage game show of Jeopardy, right? And then just saying that, I can see Freddie like going, how the hell are we going to execute that? And I can already hear Heroic Spirit Gamer having palpitations at the idea, right? Like, so it will be 100% that something that will be discussed amongst the content team.
Yeah.
And
we would work the ideas out ahead of time. It can be as simple as like, oh, we're going to do an interview Kiara had last year where it was, I believe, for virtual highlight, and we put the camera down to like 10 frames per second. Kiara was very animated about it, so you could tell that it was very low frame rate, things like that. Or where we kind of, one of the other things we did last year was we did Quexel's going to answer what his favorite Final Fantasy is, to pull back the curtain a bit. And, you know, we like, oh, there's a technical difficulty, but it's those kind of little ideas,
You've
jokes.
wanted to execute on that bit for years.
Yeah. And it's just coming up with those little things. It doesn't have to be a magic, you know, oh, we're going to, you know, have Zem do the entire play from Ratchet and Clank about whatever the character was, which was fantastic. I loved watching it, but I don't expect that. I'd love it, but I don't expect it.
Yeah. The other thing about content team is you are in a, I don't want to say an unenviable position, because you are at the whim of the schedule.
Yeah.
Because you may have a 10-minute interview planned, and whoever is on producer may be like, I need you to get this done in 5 minutes.
Yep. Right.
Or you may have a 5-minute interview planned, and the producer goes, I need you to fill like 15 minutes while we set up a 4-way race. So there is a certain amount of improvisation and being comfortable in front of a camera that is responsible for the content team.
Yeah. For the team, you've got to be comfortable to be flexible with that and like have extra questions. And for the production side, we need to make sure that that's communicated accordingly so that the content team knows what's expected of them. Be like, hey, you know, we got plenty of time, and you know, whether it be like, okay, I'll just let you know when we're at 15 minutes by doing this or something, like we'll figure that kind of stuff out when we get there. but it's a matter of communication and how to implement it and making sure everybody understands what's going on.
That's the other thing I want to, that you've just said something that triggered like a thing that I'd want to bring up that I'd forgotten about, especially with content production.
Yep.
We are coming at this almost fresh, right? Because we are starting to rebuild that department. So you are getting in on content production on the ground floor. And as we build back ends and as we produce this and that and the other, you will be able to have some input on that and go, oh, I would have found it really good if I'd had access to this last year, or that kind of thing. Like, producers already got somewhat of a
workflow,
somewhat of a framework to it.
Yeah.
And being on the content team is very much the epitome of not the best laid plans of mice and men never survive contact with the enemy. Like, the moment that camera starts rolling, like, you might as well be John Madden with the telestrator because you don't know what's going to happen, right? You have a plan and you try to stick to it, but
yep,
it doesn't quite work that way. So there's a lot of improvisation that comes up on the content team, but we try to do as much planning as we can, both before and after.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested in if anyone has any ways to improve the producer workflow or anything like that. So
you will also be included in post-event post-mortems.
Yes.
So something that we try to do amongst the staff, and something that you've all seen us do with the feedback thread in Discord, is we try to take feedback. With these departments, you are going to be involved in a concentrated post-mortem for your department, where we can literally break down the event and talk about what happened.
And how to improve it for next year.
Yeah. Exactly.
The last thing I wanted to circle around for the skits is I just wanted to make sure to stress that we like to have fun here.
Yeah.
If you've watched any of our previous events, I'm sure most of you here have, we do lots of random bits. Usually half of them Ashen just kind of comes up with it last second and implements it. But other than that, like, the more stuff, the more bits, the more skits, the more interesting fun things you can come up with us to do, and as long as it's something we physically can do or technically can do, the more the better, honestly, in my opinion.
It's about having the time and the tech to do it. Which is one of the reasons we're doing what we're doing right now.
To help foster the creativity, get everybody kind of, because I know one of the other things is joining into a established group. To some extent, you may be a little bit less ready to share, but I want to make sure everybody realizes, it's like, we're all on the same team here, and I've been out here trying to make everything work, on my end, and I am more than ready to have my ideas challenged and have ideas input. I'm yearning for them. I want them. Bring them to me. So we're definitely in a create and cooperate that we're looking for.
Another thing I want to point out, brain smart make, for the content team, if you cannot be on site, please apply anyway.
Oh yeah, please. Yes, definitely.
Because we can use you in the podcasts year round.
Yeah,
this isn't just for the content team. This isn't just an application for the 2025 event. The content team is a living, breathing entity that will be used all year round.
Not just the podcast, but also my doors open to everybody, but does give you the opportunity to maybe suggest games or runners, other things like that. Everybody can do the same, but it does put you in that same position where you can contact or message be like, hey, I know Lunar Remaster's coming up. Why don't we try and do something with that? I have a runner that likes to do that. Oh, High Spirits. Oh, I don't know this guy. Who's that? You know? But it's a lot of that. And I have been harping on the creativity, but we don't, I'm not hard requiring it. I'm just trying to stress that as something that don't keep your ideas to yourself. Feel free to share.
Yeah. And if you don't have ideas for skits, that's fine. Just be willing to execute on the ones that other people have. Like, no big deal.
A lot of times, like the people you're working with on the runner or interview side will have ideas for their own skits as well.
Usually,
like I can remember I used to do a lot more interview stuff a while back, and one of the interviews we did, we just kind of sat down as a group. We're like, oh wait, what if we just had everyone start running around and doing random things with their games the whole time? And we just kind of built it out from there. That wasn't really my own idea. That was one of the runners that came up with that. So
yeah. It's more so like taking an idea and articulating on it as well, iterating. But at the end of the day, like I said, the most important thing to me is for people that want to be in the content team, actually doing interviews, is consistency. And the production is just people to be aware of schedule and just time management. Those are the two things that are surprisingly the most important to this department.
Yeah.
And I love it when I get it.
So we're coming up on being live for about 45-ish minutes, about 3/4 of an hour. I can't expect this podcast is going to last the full 1.5, 2 hours that most podcasts do, because we're just here to talk about this very specific thing. But what I do want to do is turn to our chats, be it Twitch, YouTube, and ask them if they have any specific questions at this point about what we've talked about today, what we've announced. And since I'm here, about volunteering in general, I guess. While they're looking at that, is there anything the two of you want to add on your departments?
There's just a lot of what I mentioned are things I'd like to see, but not things I require. If you even think you're interested in it, please apply, and then we can figure out what's the best place in my department for you in terms of like X, Y, or Z, whether you just want to produce it, or if you have ideas, but you're really not interested in the tech. But, I'm looking for a broad variety of people more.
We have a question from Silver Deeds. Why are y'all such amazingly beautiful people? It's because we know you, Deeds.
Perfect. But Freddie, do you have anything?
I just want to, stress one more time that the producer role is for those that kind of thrive more in that kind of high pressure environment. It's not always a high pressure, but especially in those transition times, there are moments where you have to make a quick decision. And that's not for everyone. That's something I personally love doing. I've always kind of, it's where I work my best. But that's very much not the case for everyone. So I just want to stress that if that is something that you are good in, that you prefer, I think producer is something you should definitely look at.
Yeah. If you are going for producer, you are going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to tell people, no, you don't get to run the credits of your game. Or if we're super behind, you may have to make tough decisions about games and things like that. So
of note, the last few years, we did have issues with the internet and power going down, and we did have to make tough decisions about those. So be aware that you may have to make that decision. Ideally, it doesn't happen again, but
yeah, you will also be responsible for deciding if a game gets mercy killed.
Yeah,
which we don't want to see because we want everyone to be doing the best they can. But sometimes you just get a rando with a seed that nobody checked.
Yep,
or something like that.
I will mention as well that while you do a lot of those big decisions, there is also a support team there, like
100%
general staff. That you can always talk to me if you're not sure if you think you should cut something if it's coming up in a little bit.
Yeah,
and the very biggest decisions of fully cutting a game is not going to be on
games committee.
No.
Yeah,
that's
going to be on.
Yeah, like the games committee
primarily. Yeah.
Like the specific instance I'm referring to with the internet and the power outages, there were two of us producers, myself and another one, were discussing what we wanted to do and decided to take a plan of action. Yep. So it's not going to be like internet's been out for 15 minutes. Let's cut the run.
Sometimes you also get in situations like that where basically every other producer has gone to the same restaurant for dinner.
As we had, was it 2 years ago? A game decides that it's going to be super kind to its runner, and they world record by an hour and 15 minutes, and no one is prepared for it. Chaos. So you as the producer will have to be like, right, I need to find stuff.
Yeah. But if you do get into a producer role and you feel like you need to bounce ideas off others, feel free to talk to any of us. Message us.
But you aren't Atlas holding up the world, right?
Yeah.
You will have a team there that you can discuss things with. And then if you don't feel comfortable with the discussion you've had with the team that is on duty, you can always reach out to Freddie or myself or Gamer or Ashen or any other number of people to get counsel. The point is you are more of the shift lead, rather than the boss,
general manager. Yeah. That's a good kind of way to put it. Honestly, is you're the shift lead. There will be there's usually one of me. Me, Sid, Gamer, Ashen. Usually there's one of us just kind of hanging out for various reasons in the area. Probably more than we should be, but we're usually around.
Worst case scenario, you can look at the shifts and be like, all right, who was on shift before me? And just DM. And you're like, my phone pings. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm going back to the stream room. Be right back.
And there's also the other nice thing about having the notes is that you also use those notes as this is what's going on with the run that happened before you. This is what might be coming up for the next run. So we'll put in notes of this person is going to come in and set up on a PC during the next run for whatever reason, or something is happening during this next run. So you'll be better prepared for it from those notes.
Yeah.
So we're all working together.
Something I want to underline is content production will be on a per segment basis. Producer will be operating on the 4-hour shift cycle that we've adopted from 90% of our departments at this point. And content team again will be as needed. So there may be, if you do apply for content team, there may be a moment where we need 4 members of the content team at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
There probably won't be, but there might be.
You're talking about schedules production. Mainly I'll do it ahead of time, but if you have ideas about stuff, you can bring it to me. When we're on site, there will be some production there, but I very much know that there's a lot of pre-production stuff that needs to happen. So we try and have as much of that hashed out beforehand. And then when we get on site and we need to make tweaks, we can, and everybody knows about it. Same thing for the interview or content team. That will be mainly online whenever we're doing off-site stuff. But a lot of the on-site stuff we'll have already discussed. We'll picked out our interviews. We'll know who's interviewing who. Any content ideas we have, which are just broadly defined with the brush of skits, more so just like non-interview based content.
I think I would prefer the term segment, because skits implies that they're supposed to be comedy.
Yeah, it may just a segment that is not an interview. Basically any sort of creative endeavor that's
like, I have this idea in my brain about doing like I'm not sure what you call it in this country, the Family Feud.
Oh yeah,
right, but based on like video games. So I'd put out a form in the Discord, collate all of the answers from whoever fills it out. Then we'd have like 2 teams, like content team and a couple of runners on either side, and we can just play around with that. But like, that's what we're saying. That's what we mean by like a segment. This doesn't have to be like, oh, we're gonna have a scripted plot. Like,
I don't expect an episode of The Office. Okay,
I mean, I could write one if you want.
But ideally, it's just thinking things up and being a bit more creative.
Yeah.
But yeah, the content will be a little bit more flexible. Obviously, producer will be mainly on site, bordering the like pre-production and post-production, where we get everybody on board, which is the whole reason we're doing this early, to make sure that everybody can be part of the pre-production and get in as part of the team and understand what's going on.
Yeah, especially for production, there's a lot, like I said, everyone on production has been staffed, and most of them are leading their own sections of tech. So I try to do as little overhead for them as they need to not add more to that plate. So a lot of the pre-work, like I said, is a lot of paperwork, not paperwork, a lot of documentation, and just making sure everyone's comfortable, and then running a quick orientation, a quick rundown of what we'll all be doing before the event starts.
So I want to try and keep this to about an hour, which means we've got about 4 minutes left. So what I really want to say is thank you to everybody that's watching. If you have any questions, there is an email link on the form that says you can email management@limitbreak.com. Also, please feel free to reach out to me specifically via a Discord DM, or I will answer any questions you have that I can. If not, I think Sid and Freddie would be okay being reached out to on Discord as well.
I would actually solicit any of that at a moment's notice.
Same.
That being said, we're looking forward to working with you on this stuff. I know we've been quite we've been trying to drill down that this is these are important roles that we're looking to fill and grow, and we're looking forward to having you guys come on and grow with those roles.
Yeah.
Please do not think these are the only things that are going to be opening up. We will have the regular volunteer form starting on the 9th of March, he said, trying to remember off the top of his head.
9th of March.
The 9th of March.
Yep.
We will have hosting, donation station, all the other departments will still be there. And I hope that you all apply for those as well. Any final thoughts, Sid?
Yeah, all the stuff we talked about, like I've said, that it's a lot of factors for all these different job positions, but more so, we're not trying to say that you need to have all of these things. These are just things we'd like to see, and they are skills you can grow with us that we are interested in assisting with.
Any final thoughts, Freddie?
On a similar line, yeah, it's while there is a little bit of pressure on a role like producer, especially, there is not as much necessarily as other roles, because we simply just don't have as many transitions.
Yeah.
As marathons with shorter runs. RPGs are long runs. It's fun.
Yeah,
gives you chance to breathe.
I guess that will leave us at the end of this podcast.
Yep.
It's been a foreshortened episode. but it was a very focused episode about a thing that we wanted to drill down on.
Yep.
So we will leave you, as we always do whenever I am involved in a podcast, by saying, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and all those beyond that spectrum, please be excellent to each other. Party on, my friends. And we'll see you next time.